Greetings and salutations. This is the Adjutant. If you're preparing to take off the uniform for the last time, today's conversation may be one of the most important conversations you'll ever have, because there's a day coming when you'll button that uniform one last time. You'll straighten your ribbons, you'll adjust your collar, you'll put on your boots, and you'll drive through the gate. You'll do your job, you'll shake a few hands, maybe you'll salute someone for the last time. Maybe someone will actually salute you. Your turn, you'll turn in all your equipment, you'll sign your paperwork, you'll hand over your identification card, and then you'll get in your car, drive through the gate, look in your rearview mirror, and realize that after years, maybe even decades, you are no longer in the United States military. For some people, that day feels like freedom. For others, it feels like uncertainty. For many, it feels like both. I've watched thousands of veterans make that transition. Some stepped into incredible lives filled with opportunity, financial security, meaningful work, and peace. Others struggle almost immediately. Not because they lacked intelligence, not because they lacked discipline, not because they weren't good leaders. They struggled because they didn't understand that the transition out of the military service begins long before the last day in uniform. I spent more than 2 decades as a VA adjudicator. Before that, I served more than 26 years in the Army. I've also practiced law for more than a decade. I've had the privilege of teaching as an adjunct college professor, and throughout every one of those careers, I've seen the same pattern repeat itself. People spend years preparing for promotion. They prepare for deployments. They prepare for inspections. They prepare for schools. They prepare for retirement ceremonies. But surprisingly, few people prepare for life after the uniform with the same level of intentionality. Well, that's what this video is about. Not simply checking boxes, not simply verifying retirement, not simply finding another job. It's about making sure that when you walk away from military service, you don't accidentally leave behind benefits, opportunities, financial security, relationship, or even pieces of yourself that you wish you had protected. Because here's something that I want you to hear early, okay? The decisions you make during your final year in uniform can affect the next 30 years of your life. Now, read that sentence again in your mind. The next 30 years. That's why this isn't just another separation checklist. This is a masterclass. And before we're finished, I'm going to share one lesson that I've watched separate veterans who thrive from veterans who spend years trying to recover from preventable mistakes. Now, we'll come back to that before we finish. Let's start with the first thing every veteran should do before their last day in uniform. Protect your medical history. Notice I didn't say protect your medical record. I said protect your medical story. Now, there's a difference. A medical record is a collection of appointments. Your medical story is a complete picture of what military service did to your body and your mind over time. One of the biggest misconceptions I hear from service members is this: I'll deal with this after I retire, or, well, it's not that bad, or I don't want to complain. I've heard those words more times than I can count, and I understand where they come from. Military culture teaches toughness, mission first, drive on, keep moving. Don't be the person who slows down the team. Those values help create exceptional service members, but those same habits can unintentionally create serious problems when it's time to establish what happened during military service. Okay? I've seen veterans wait 10 years before mentioning chronic knee pain. I've seen people ignore hearing problems because everyone around them had hearing problems too. I've seen service members dismiss sleep issues, migraine, anxiety, digestive problems, back pain, shoulder injuries, and dozens of other conditions because they convinced themselves that everyone else had the same thing. Maybe they did, but if it happened during your service and it's affecting your life today, it matters. Here's the reality. Your body remembers every road march, every airborne landing, every jump from a vehicle, every deployment, every sleepless night, every heavy rucksack, every repeat of movement, every blast exposure, every stressful assignment, even when you learn to live with it. Even when you learn to live it, your body remembers. Remember that. Now, one of the most dangerous sentences a veteran can say is, I just got used to it. You may have gotten used to it. That doesn't mean it isn't real. That doesn't mean it isn't affecting your quality of life. That doesn't mean it won't become more serious 20 years from now. Before your last day in uniform, schedule appointments for issues you've been putting off. Talk honestly with your medical providers. Don't exaggerate. Don't minimize. Tell the truth. Describe what you're experiencing. Explain how often it happens. Explain how it affects your work. Explain how it affects your sleep. Explain how it affects your family. Explain how it affects your daily living. The goal isn't to create problems. The goal is to accurately document problems that already exist. And while we're talking about documentation, let me say something that I wish every service member understood. Never assume someone else documented what happened to you. Never assume. Verify. If you injured your shoulder during training, make sure it's documented. If you develop chronic back pain after years of carrying equipment, make sure it's documented. If deployments affected your sleep or your mental health, make sure it's documented. If you experience recurring sinus problems, respiratory conditions, skin conditions, headache, or digestive issues, make sure it's documented. Documentation isn't about expecting the worst, it's about preserving the truth, because memories fade, people retire, units deactivate, records become harder to locate. Time changes everything. Your documentation is one of the few things that continue speaking long after your military career has ended. Now, let me give you another perspective that comes directly from years of reviewing veterans' claims. Some of the strongest claims I've ever seen weren't strong because they involved catastrophic injuries. They were strong because the documentation told a consistent story. The records matched the history. The history matched the symptoms. The symptoms matched the medical evidence. Everything fit together. On the other hand, I've seen veterans who genuinely suffered during service face years of unnecessary difficulty because there were significant gaps in documentation that could have been addressed before separation. Don't create those gaps if you have the opportunity to prevent them. Future you will be grateful that present you took the time. Now, before we move on to the next lesson, I want you to remember something. Your military career is ending. Your health journey isn't. Your transition isn't about proving how tough you were. You already done that. Now it's about taking care of the person who has to live the rest of his or her life after the mission is over. That brings us to the second thing every veteran should do before taking off the uniform for the last time. Become the chief executive officer of your own records. Not your commander, not your first sergeant, not your administrative office, you. Too many people assume that because we live in a digital world, everything will always be available. I wouldn't make that assumption at all. Before your last day, obtain copies of your medical records, your service treatment records, your personal records, your evaluations, your awards, your decorations, your deployment documentation, your schools and training certificates, your orders, your retirement paperwork or separation paperwork. And when your DD-214 is issued, don't simply glance at it. Review every line carefully. What do I mean by that? I mean your name, your dates of service, your caricature of discharge, awards, military education, deployment information where applicable. Every detail matters. One incorrect entry may seem minor today, but years from now, it could create unnecessary delays, confusion, or administrative hurdles. Remember this principle. Paperwork is rarely important until the day you desperately need it. And when that day arrives, you will either be thankful you prepared or you'll wish you had. We'll continue building that foundation because next we're going to talk about one of the most misunderstood aspects of military transition, the difference between simply leaving the service and leaving with a deliberate strategy that positions you for long-term success. All right, let's go ahead and continue. I ended the last section by saying there's a difference between leaving the military and leaving with a strategy. The difference changes lives. I've seen veterans who retired on Friday and felt like they had stepped confidently into the next chapter of their lives by Monday. I've also seen veterans who retired with the same rank, similar careers, comparable benefits, and nearly identical financial situations who spent months or even years trying to regain their footing. The difference usually wasn't intelligence, it wasn't motivation, it wasn't even money. It was preparation. Preparation creates confidence. Confidence produces decisions. Good decisions compound over time. That's exactly what we're trying to accomplish before your last day in uniform. Now, the next thing every veteran should do is understand exactly what benefits they've earned and exactly how those benefits fit together. Notice I didn't say know the benefits exist. I said understand how they work together. Think of your military benefits like pieces of a puzzle, okay? You have retired pay, VA disability compensation, the GI Bill, VA home loan benefits, TRICARE, life insurance, education opportunities, state veteran benefits, tax advantages, commissary and exchange privileges where applicable, survivor benefits. Now, most veterans know these programs exist. Far fewer understand how they interact with one another. That's where costly mistakes happen. Often the greatest opportunities you have before separation is time. Time to ask questions, time to attend transition classes, time to meet with financial counselors, time to meet with installation retirement services, time to understand your options before decisions become permanent. Never confuse familiarity with understanding. Just because you've heard about a benefit doesn't mean you know how to maximize it. For example, I cannot tell you how many veterans I've spoken with who discovered years later that they could have made better decisions if they had simply asked one more question before retiring. Don't be embarrassed to ask questions. I've spent my entire professional life around military and veterans benefits. I still ask questions. That's what professionals do. They verify, they learn, they prepare. Now, the next area deserves even more attention because it affects every other part of your transition, your finances. Now, let me say something that may surprise you. Retirement is not primarily a financial event. It's a lifestyle event. Money simply supports the lifestyle. I've watched veterans focus entirely on calculating retired pay while giving almost no thought to what daily civilian life will actually cost. Now, before your last day in uniform, build a realistic civilian retirement budget. Not an optimistic one, a realistic one. What will housing cost? Utilities, transportation, insurance, food, medical expenses, taxes, entertainment, travel, emergency repairs, family obligations. Many military expenses are subsidized or structured differently than they will be after separation. Don't assume your civilian budget will look exactly like your military budget. Build it. Test it, refine it. If possible, start living on that budget several months before retirement. That's one of the best stress tests you can perform. If something doesn't work, you still have time to make adjustments while you're receiving your active duty income. And while we're talking about finances, let me encourage you to establish or strengthen your emergency fund before leaving the service. Transition often includes unexpected delays. A job starts later than expected. A home purchase takes longer than anticipated. Paperwork moves slower than anyone hoped. Life has a way of reminding us that flexibility has value. An emergency fund gives you options. Options reduce stress. Stress reduction improves decision making. Those are investments that pay dividends long after retirement. Okay? Now, the next thing every veteran should do is review every beneficiary designation. This is one of those administrative tasks that doesn't feel exciting, but it is incredibly important. Review your life insurance beneficiaries. Review retirement beneficiaries. Review financial accounts. Review your survivor benefit election if applicable. Review powers of attorney. Review wills. Review healthcare directives. Ask yourself one simple question. If something happened to me tomorrow, would the people I love be protected? If the answer isn't an immediate yes, don't postpone fixing it. Now, I'd like to pause for just a moment and speak directly to military families, okay? And I mean spouses, children, parents, and loved ones also experience military transition. Sometimes we focus so much on service members that we overlook everyone else making the journey alongside with them. Include your family in the planning process. Talk about expectations, discuss finances, discuss schedules, discuss relocation, discuss new routines. Transitions become much easier when everyone understands the plan. Now, one lesson I learned during my own military career is that communication eliminates unnecessary anxiety. Silence often creates fear. Conversations create confidence. Okay? Now, let's shift to something that almost nobody discusses during transition. Identity. This may be the single most overlooked challenge veterans face. For years, your introduction has been connected to the military. I'm a soldier. I'm an airman. I'm a sailor. I'm a Marine. I'm a guardian. These are all things that people think about. Your rank becomes part of your identity. Your unit becomes part of your identity. Your mission becomes part of your identity. Your schedule becomes part of your identity. Then one day, almost overnight, those things change. That transition can feel surprisingly emotional. I've spoken with veterans who told me they miss putting on the uniform. Others missed morning formations. Some missed simply being around people who understood military culture without explanation. Some discovered that what they missed most wasn't the work, it was belonging. Now, here's what I want you to remember. The uniform gave expression to your purpose. It was never the source of your purpose. Those are two different things. Your values didn't retire. Your discipline didn't retire. Your leadership didn't retire. Your integrity didn't retire. Your ability to solve problems didn't retire. The mission changed. You didn't. Some of the most meaningful work you'll ever do may actually begin after military service. You simply haven't met those opportunities yet. I know that can be difficult to believe when you're standing at the edge of transition, but I lived it. I served in the military. I've practiced law. I taught college students. I spent decades serving veterans through the Department of Veterans Affairs. Each chapter looked different. Each chapter required learning. Each chapter stretched me in new ways. Every chapter reminded me that purpose is portable. You carry it with you. Not in your uniform, but in your caricature. That's an important distinction because in the final part of this masterclass, we're going to talk about the relationships you should preserve before leaving the military, the 90-day transition plan that can dramatically improve your first months as a civilian, and the one lesson I've watched separate veterans who merely transition from those who truly thrive after the uniform comes off. All right, let's finish strong, folks, okay? Now, up to this point, we've talked about protecting your medical story, preserving your records, understanding your benefits, preparing financially, protecting your family, and recognizing that your purpose extends far beyond the uniform. Now I want to talk about something that often becomes more valuable with time than people realize, and that's relationships. The military is built on people. Yes, it's built on discipline. Yes, it's built on standards. Yes, it's built on training and readiness, but at its heart, it's built on relationships. The platoon sergeant who believed in you before you believed in yourself. The first-line supervisor who challenged you to become a better leader. The commander who entrusted you with greater responsibilities. the battle buddy who stood beside you during difficult seasons, the mentor who quietly gave you advice that changed your career. Now, before your last day in uniform, don't simply disappear. Reach out, say thank you, exchange personal contact information, connect on professional networking platforms, ask for letters of recommendation if appropriate. Stay connected with people whose character you admire, not because you expect them to find you a job, but because meaningful relationships have a way of opening doors years after both people have forgotten the original conversation. One of the greatest misconceptions about networking is that it's about collecting contacts. It isn't. It's about cultivating trust. Trust compounds just like good financial decisions do. Now let's talk about your first 90 days after leaving the military. Many veterans spend preparing for retirement, but very few little time preparing for Tuesday morning. Think about that. Retirement ceremonies are wonderful. Farewell lunches are meaningful. Receiving your certificates of retirement is memorable. But eventually Tuesday morning arrives. The alarm clock doesn't ring for formation. No one calls with the daily tasking. Your military email stops receiving traffic. Your calendar suddenly looks different. What happens then? That's why I encourage every veteran to create a 90-day transition plan before the last day in uniform. Maintain a consistent wake-up time. Continue exercising. Schedule time for learning. Schedule time for job searching if you're seeking employment. Schedule time with family. Schedule time for rest. Schedule time for personal growth. Structure creates momentum. Momentum builds confidence. Confidence keeps people moving forward. One of the greatest strengths the military develops is discipline. Don't accidentally abandon one of the greatest assets simply because your environment changed. Carry your discipline into civilian life. It will continue serving you long after the uniform is hanging in the closet. Now I'd like to return to something I promised at the beginning of this video. I've told you there was one lesson I've seen separate veterans who thrive from those who spend years trying to recover. Well, here it is. The veterans who thrive don't simply prepare for what they're leaving. They prepare for what they're becoming. Readiness isn't just about departure, it's about direction. Too many people become experts on the past while remaining uncertain about the future. They know every regulation, every assignment, every deployment, every promotion board, but they haven't taken the time to answer one very important question. Who am I becoming after military service? Notice I didn't ask, what job am I getting? They aren't the same question. Jobs provide income, identity provides direction. Purpose provides endurance. If your entire identity ends with the uniform, retirement can feel like loss. But if you understand that uniform represented one chapter in a much larger story, retirement becomes a transition instead of a conclusion. I learned that lesson myself. When I retired from the Army, I wasn't leaving service. I was changing the way I served. As an attorney, I served people through the law. As an adjunct college professor, I served students through education. As a VA adjudicator, I spent decades serving veterans by helping ensure they receive the benefits that the law provides. Different uniforms, different titles, same purpose. Service didn't end. It evolved. Perhaps that's exactly what's waiting for you. Maybe your greatest contribution hasn't happened yet. Maybe the wisdom you've gained through deployments, leadership, sacrifice, resilience, and perseverance is preparing you to mentor someone else. Maybe you'll build a business. Maybe you'll teach. Maybe you'll volunteer. Maybe you'll become the parent or grandparent whose presence changes the trajectory of an entire family. Never underestimate the value of life shaped by faithful service. Now, I want you to picture something. Imagine that final day, you're wearing the uniform one last time. You finished, You finish your responsibilities, you shake hands with people you served beside for years, you walk toward your vehicle, you drive slowly toward the installation gate, the gate opens, you cross through it, you glance into your rearview mirror, the installation grows smaller with every passing mile. In that moment, I hope you don't feel fear. I hope you feel gratitude. Gratitude for the privilege of serving something greater than yourself. Gratitude for the lessons you learned. Gratitude for the people you met. Gratitude for the sacrifices that have shaped your character. And I hope you feel confidence, not because every answer is already known, but because you prepared well. Because preparation has replaced uncertainty. Because wisdom has replaced assumption. Because intentional decisions have replaced last-minute reactions. The uniform may come off, but your integrity doesn't. Your discipline doesn't. Your leadership doesn't. Your resilience doesn't. Your commitment to excellence doesn't. Those qualities belong to you. No retirement ceremony can ever take that away. No DD-214 can replace them. No title can define them. Carry them with you. They are the greatest benefits you'll ever leave the military with. If today's conversation has been helpful, share it with service members who's approaching retirement or separation. It may save them years of frustration and help them begin the next chapter with confidence. And if you're already a veteran, I'd love for you to leave a comment below and answer one question. What do you wish someone had told you before your last day in uniform? Your experience may become the encouragement another veteran needs today. Thank you for spending this time with me. Until next time, continue preparing not only for retirement, but for a life of purpose beyond the uniform. And so there you have it. I wish you all blessings and blessings. Shalom.